Hello and welcome. This is the Zen community of Oregon, making the teachings of the Buddha Dharma accessible to support your practice. New episodes air every week.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your practice. We're all practicing together in a quite wonderful way. The Zendo is luminous with everyone's wholehearted presence. We began this Sesshin with this beautiful Koan, Blue Cliff Record, Case 86. Yunmen imparted some words saying, everyone has a light. When you look at it, you don't see it, and it's dark and dim. What is everybody's light? He answered on their behalf, the kitchen pantry and the main gate. He also said, a good thing isn't as good as nothing. What is everybody's light? Everyone's light is shining, whether you realize it or not. As Koan Ejo says, that we read this morning, the Komyo Zozanmai, forest, flowers, grasses, leaves, humans, and animals, large or small, long or short, square or round, all display themselves simultaneously, free of discriminating thoughts or intention. This is luminosity unobstructed in impermanence. It does not depend on your mind. Luminosity is its own open brilliance. It does not depend on your mind. This light, everyone has a light. When you look at it, you don't see it, and it's dark and dim. When the mind of seeking or attainment is employed in this way, it's dim. In this case, unobstructed is recognition. It's a recognition. You will intimately realize reality as if you'd come face to face with your grandfather in the village. That's a recognition. It's not cognition. It's not figuring it out. Kisei told the story of the first transmission of the light. The first Zen story. Or what Zen likes to say, here's the beginning. In the beginning there was light. The first patriarch was Mahakashapa. Maha means great. The first patriarch, the first ancestor, was Kashapa. Once, the world-honored one held up a flower and blinked. Kashapa smiled. The world-honored one said, I have the treasury of the eye of the true Dharma and the wondrous mind of Nirvana, and I transmit it to Mahakashapa. What did the Buddha give to Kashapa? A flower? A gesture? What does it mean to transmit? This is from the Denkoroku, the transmission of the light. What light is transmitted? What, if anything, is transmitted? One way to look at this particular expression, this story, is a story of recognition. Two lights, two mirrors reflecting each other. Two mirrors facing each other and reflecting each other infinitely. It goes on and on. If anything, what we are doing here is becoming more and more able to recognize the light. The ancestors are trying to help us recognize that light, our light, your light. Recognizing the truth. So Sesshin at this point has its own momentum. We're flowing together, sitting, eating, walking. It's at this point in Sesshin that we find we may have more attunement to our experience. When we start out, it feels like a huge effort to come back to the method of breath. And of course, there are those periods. Even with many thoughts coming and going, we're able to stay longer and longer and at least see the activity of the mind without being entangled by it. And we become more and more sensitive to the workings of the mind and heart. And so at this point, it's good to attune to effort. We may find that we don't need so much effort and that putting effort in floods the engine. Or we may find that we've become satisfied and comfortable and we have some calm and are cruising. In which case, as we say at the beginning of period, or encourage you to check in with your vow. Your vow is not to cruise. No one would sit a Sesshin to just cruise. No one has that vow. No one who has a vow that you all have. But of course, the mind comes in. And so we have to be creative. We have to be sensitive. We have to be aware of our experience and respond in appropriate ways. One way to think about this attunement, or a way to practice, is from Master Sheng Yen. Master Sheng Yen was a Chan teacher from Taiwan. And he came to the United States and taught Chan, which is the Chinese expression of Zen. And he has a very nice metaphor of practice, that it's like catching feather on a fan, on the old-timey paper fan. So, speaking of recognition, he says, the paradoxical thing is very often, as soon as you recognize the fact of wandering, the mind clears. Recognition itself can do the trick. Sometimes the wandering of the mind is due to fatigue or lack of energy. There may be a physiological cause for it. Maybe you do not actually feel drowsy, but the energy for concentration is lacking. The art of it is to recognize again and again the state of the mind. If it is wandering, simply bring it back into focus. By doing this again and again, eventually the body energy will be renewed and you will have fewer periods of wandering thoughts. There is a daily cycle of energy. Within some periods, you will have less than at other times. This is natural. No need for a fight. Simply be attentively aware at all times. Now, can we all relate to this? Sometimes we'll have fewer periods of wandering thoughts. We all have the ups and downs. Sometimes things are in focus and present. Sometimes they're scattered. Some of us find it easier or more easeful or more focused in the first thing in the morning. Others of us are very drowsy. We have these cycles. No need for a fight, he says. Simply be attentively aware at all times. We can make use of an analogy here, Sheng Yen says. Meditation is like using a fan, the old-fashioned handheld type. You have the task of catching a feather on a fan. Every time you move the fan, the feather is likely to be blown away. It is a delicate business. You have to hold the fan quite still, just under the space through which the feather is sinking of its own motion. The feather then comes to rest on the top of the fan. You can imagine how difficult or how easy this may be. Any use of force and the feather is lost. Yet once you grasp the principle of it, it is very easy to do. Stilling the mind is like catching a feather with a fan. It needs patience and persistence. Patience and persistence. When practicing, do not be afraid of distracting thoughts. If your body has a problem, do not be concerned with it. If your mind is worrying, put the worry down. Keep the mind on the method, waiting for the feather to sink onto the fan. Catching a feather on a fan. Catching a feather on a fan. Another important part of this phase of Sesshin is to not have any conclusions. Conclusions about our practice, conclusions about Sesshin. Are the mind being very tricky? Mind, it looks like this is practice, but it's actually the mind thinking about the practice. It's very tricky. Especially if you've been working with it for a while, it's trying to find ways to get in there and run things. No conclusions. Just continue. Just continue. Come back, come back. Now is a time to continue to practice intimacy. At the foot of a lonely mountain, there was a small temple. There a pilgrim looked to get out of the rain. It was dark and more difficult to find your way. The pilgrim knocked on the door and was greeted by an old abbot. He made the visitor tea and they sat down. The abbot Dizang asked Fayan, "Where are you going?" Fayan said, "Around on pilgrimage." Dizang said, "What is the purpose of your pilgrimage?" Fayan said, "I don't know." Dizang said, "Not knowing is most intimate." We've been returning to this particular interaction through Sesshin. And there are many ways to engage with it. It can illuminate our Sesshin experience. Where are you going? He's trying to test. Is he leaning forward or is he taking a backward step? Leaning forward into the future, into a gaining idea, into Sunday afternoon. Where are you going? Where is your head? I'm going around on a pilgrimage. Fayan says, I am sitting Sesshin. What is the purpose of the pilgrimage? Do you have a gaining idea? Are you trying to get something? Fayan says, I don't know. Body, 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 body. Dizang says, not knowing is most intimate. Nearness. Nearness. Our practice is nearness. Drawing near. Intimate. Can you get as near as a mirror and its images? Mirror facing mirror. Don't draw any conclusions. That is knowing. Oh, I know how this is. I know how this is going. I know how my practice is. That's knowing. It's not intimate. It's what the mind does. So it's not a problem. As Sheng Yen was saying, we recognize what the mind is up to and we return. But when we draw conclusions, that knowing, this is the kind of knowing that shatters intimacy. Yesterday, Kisei told us the story of one of our women ancestors, Kakuzan Shido. She who obtained a great mirror and became a way of practice for her and the women who practiced Zen with her. Is your nearness as near as a mirror in its display? Practicing as mirror. So we have, this is a time that intimacy can deepen. So Sheng Yen says, he said, as I have said before, it is like catching feather on a fan. It takes a certain alertness and discernment, engagement. Whenever you feel, he says, whenever you feel lazy and you need to bring up some energy, check your posture and make the mind bright. Whenever you feel stressed or fatigued, examine yourself to see whether you are putting too much tension in your body and holding the posture too rigidly. Finding a balanced and relaxed alertness of the body, but the mind needs to do the same. The mind needs to be clear about what you're doing, neither drowsy nor drifting in a vague haze or a blank stupor. Alert, aware, and present, but not tense, nor preoccupied by intention to do well or by regret. And these are all the things that come up. It's very human. So with intimacy of a mirror, the mind as mirror, he says that arises when one is settled in or at home in the meditation. When this appears, there is no longer any particular feeling of bodily presence. You know very well that your body is there on the cushion, but you have no particular awareness of its presence, no particular sort of self-consciousness of your body. One could say that the body is no longer troubles or concerned you. At this level of meditation becomes deeply established. Although you may be aware of local twinges of pain, it does not trouble you. It's just part of experiencing. Often they meaning discomfort disappears entirely. In the same way the body will cease to concern you, so too will the environment. The environment and your awareness cease to be represented as two different things. The duality melts into one experience. You hear the sound of birdsong, but you're not concerned as they do not concern you as such. Naming it, not distinguishing between inside and outside. It's just one experiencing. Just like that. Just like that. Deepening to that intimacy where it's just, instead of I'm experiencing birdsong, I'm listening to the birds. Now I'm not listening to the birds. It's one experiencing. We read the Komyo Zozanmai. It talks about this intimacy, breathing in, breathing out, hearing, touching, without thoughts of separation, is just the silent illumination of luminosity in which body and mind are single. And this is not a state of being a lump, state of being checked out. Body and mind are single. Thus, when someone calls, you immediately answer. Appropriate response. This is the naturalness. Like Dogen said in the Fukan Zazengi, if you grasp the point, you are like a dragon gaining the water, like a tiger taking to the mountains. The dragon is of the water. Tigers are of the mountain. Natural, just like this. We've been looking at the Fukan Zazengi, and Dogen tells us in the same way that Shengyen is saying about not thinking good or bad, not judging. Give up the operations of mind, intellect, and consciousness. Stop measuring with thoughts, ideas, and views. Stop measuring. I'm this far from what I want. Have no designs on becoming a Buddha. I was remembering that with this mirror metaphor that that Kisei brought in, that Jiyu Kennet, the 20th century woman ancestor we chanted this morning as Ho'un Jiyu, she calls this just sitting of Shikantaza serene reflection. Serene reflection. Reflection like a mirror. Do not think good or bad. Do not judge true or false. Give up the operations of mind, intellect, and consciousness. Stop measuring with thoughts, ideas, and views. So she talks about this in this way. One must not deliberately try to think, nor deliberately try not to think. Thoughts come and go in our heads, and we can either play with them or just sit there and allow them to pass. 84,000 thoughts come and go, as Komyo Zozanmai says. Too many of us allow ourselves to be hijacked by our thoughts, while some try to deliberately push them away. Both of these activities are completely incorrect. The Japanese distinguish between deliberate thought and natural thought. Deliberate thought and natural thought. There's absolutely nothing wrong with natural thought. Because our ears are not plugged up during meditation, it is normal for us to hear cars passing on the road and birds singing. Because our eyes are not closed, it is only reasonable we will notice patterns on the floor. These things will only disturb us if we permit ourselves to discuss them in our own minds. If one notices that a car is going by and just hears, no problem, natural thought. If one becomes annoyed or pleased about it, then meditation has already ceased. All that is required in meditation is that one sit with a positive attitude of mind, knowing that if one does so, one will indeed find the true Buddha within themselves. Deliberate thought and natural thought. These are a new way to describe what we've been experiencing. Deliberate thought is the mind employed in judging, measuring good and bad, the operations of mind, as Dogen says. The natural thought is another way to describe a reflection, recognition. If you do not propagate thoughts, they will not continue themselves. Koan Ejo says, and we read this morning, just breathing in, just breathing out, just so, sitting under the open sky, weightless as a flame. Even if 84,000 thoughts come and go, each will display itself as the luminosity of perfect knowing itself. If you do not hold to them and allow them to just go on their way, like a mirror, serene reflection. Dogen again. Stop measuring your thoughts, ideas, and views. Have no designs on becoming a Buddha. Have no designs on becoming a Buddha. I thought that's what we were here for. I'm trying to become a Buddha. Well, there's a wonderful story from the ancestors about just this. And it involves becoming a Buddha in a mirror. This is from Zen Master Dogen's 300 koans compiled by John Daido Luri. Zen Master Mazu was an attendant to Nanwei and personally received the mind seal recognition, exceeding his peers. Before that, Mazu lived in the monastery and did Zazen all day long. Knowing that Mazu was a Dharma vessel, Nanwei, the teacher, went to him and asked, "Great monastic, what do you intend by doing Zazen?" Mazu said, "I'm intending to be a Buddha." Nanwei picked up a brick and started polishing it. Mazu said, "What are you doing?" Nanwei said, "I'm trying to make a mirror." Mazu said, "How can you make a mirror by polishing a brick?" Nanwei said, "How can you become a Buddha by doing Zazen?" And the Mazu said, "What do you mean by that?" Nanwei said, "Think about driving a cart. When it stops moving, do you whip the cart or the horse?" Mazu said nothing. Nanwei said, "Do you want to practice sitting Zen or sitting Buddha? If you understand sitting Zen, you will know that Zen is not about sitting or lying down. If you want to learn sitting Buddha, know that sitting Buddha is without any fixed form. Do not use discrimination in the non-abiding Dharma. If you practice sitting as Buddha, you must kill Buddha. If you are attached to the sitting form, you are not yet mastering the essential principle." Mazu heard this admonition and felt as if he had tasted sweet nectar. Great monastic, what do you intend by doing Zazen? I am intending to be a Buddha. Nanwei picked up a brick and started polishing it. Mazu said, "What are you doing?" Nanwei said, "I'm trying to make a mirror." Mazu said, "How can you make a mirror by polishing a brick?" Nanwei said, "How can you become a Buddha by doing Zazen?" So I'd like to share a little bit about the compiler and some commentary by Daido Loori. Daido Loori was a founder of Zen Mountain Monastery, and he was a Dharma brother of Chozen Roshi, Hogen Roshi. He founded Zen Mountain Monastery and the Mountains and Rivers Order and was a guiding teacher for almost 30 years. He was a chemist, artist, a photographer, naturalist, a parent, and Zen priest. He was deeply inspired by the photographer Minor White, who he studied with for a time, and studied with Soen Nakagawa Roshi, who was one of the early Japanese to come over. But it was Taizan Maizumi Roshi, who we've talked about before, Maizumi, who became Daido's principal teacher and had a great impact on his training and development as a teacher. So that's from ZMM's bio. I listened to, when I first started practicing Zen, one of the first podcasts was Zen podcasts that I found was from Zen Mountain Monastery, and it had talks from Daido and the other teachers. And it hadn't made the podcasts were new in those days, so it had this kind of radio feel. It was called WZEN, which might have been their radio show before there were podcasts, but you're listening to WZEN. It's like, I listened to him when I first came to practice and appreciated his New Jersey accent, especially, and he would talk about the ancient mirror. And it's kind of still, like years later, it's still a running joke between Jomon and I. We'll talk about the ancient mirror. So Daido talks about polishing a brick into a mirror. Very clear teaching from Daido Roshi. So just a couple words to share his comments on this particular story, and then some of my own from that. You should understand that Zazen is not meditation or contemplation. It is not about quieting the mind, focusing the mind, or studying the mind. It is not mindfulness or mindlessness. If you want to really understand Zazen, then know that Zazen is not about sitting or lying down. He's quoting Nanwei. Zazen is Zazen. And he's referencing what Dogen had talked about, Zazen not being meditation practice. Zazen is Zazen. And what is our Zazen? Intimacy, presence, serene reflection, a mirror. Each thing is not, he goes on to say, each thing is not transformed into the other, but is in fact originally the other. Practice is the unfoldment. He has a nice poem, a capping verse. We'll come back to that. So about the story, Mazu saying, I'm intending to be a Buddha. That's our mind of trying to get something. That's my Zazen is conditional. My practice is conditional on me getting the goodies. Even though the Buddha has dropped jewels in our lap, right here, seeking. Nanwei picked up a brick and started polishing it. That's all the old masters over and over again telling us to let go of the gaining idea that I'm trying to get something, making our practice, making our life one more thing that we're clinging to. I'm trying to make a mirror. Nanwei's trying to show us how upside down it is when we don't know who we really are. From the vantage point of clarity, it doesn't make sense to cover the world in our beliefs and views when we can just hear the bird song, when we can just be intimate with a friend as opposed to judging them, that we could be intimate with ourselves as opposed to having some idea about here's how I should be. It's just as upside down as trying to make a mirror out of a brick. From the beginning, all beings are Buddhas. And it's a matter of recognition of the truth. So just share Daido's capping verse. On the tips of 10,000 grasses, each and every dewdrop contains the light of the moon. Since the beginning of time, not a single droplet has been forgotten. Although this is so, some may realize it and some may not. On the tips of the 10,000 grasses, each and every dewdrop contains the light of the moon. The 10,000 grasses are reality itself. The light of the moon, reflected in everything. And don't you remember that everything has its own light? Not a single droplet has been forgotten. Since the beginning of time, not a single droplet has been forgotten. Nothing is left out of this light of the moon, this awakening. Although this is so, some may realize it and some may not. A quote from the Genjo Koan. Some may realize it and some may not. Some will whip the cart, some will whip the horse. Is any of that needed? Is any of that needed? This being so, intelligence or lack of it, not an issue. No distinction between the dull and the sharp-witted. Concentrate your intimacy, your effort, single-mindedly. That in itself is wholeheartedly engaging the way. Going forward is, after all, an everyday affair. Ordinary, completely ordinary. Dogen closes the Fukan Zazengi with, "Please, honored followers of Zen, long accustomed to groping for the elephant, do not doubt the true dragon." So, like the tiger and the dragon, what is this about? So this is from Maezumi Roshi's commentary on the Fukan Zazengi, and he unpacks this part. He says, in the last paragraph, Dogen Zenji sums up what Zazen is and what it does for us. The line, long accustomed to groping, refers to the elephant, refers to a parable of a blind man and the elephant, in which a group of blind men trying to find out what an elephant is like, using only their sense of touch. One feeling the trunk says the elephants are shaped like snakes. Another feeling the legs says that elephants are like trees. Each clings to their own limited perception and so jumps to false conclusion. So this is our ordinary, this is our way of thinking covered by our reactivity and beliefs. And that when we have, we leap into here's how it is based on our limited experience and close off possibility. Maezumi basically says that by saying we have our own self-styled ideas, understandings, and concept, and we stick to them and regard them as measurements. A larger container contains more. Do not doubt the true dragon. The true dragon represents freedom. We are bound by whatever we cling to, even enlightenment. We can bind ourselves to enlightenment, freedom, and even peace, in which case there's actually no freedom or peace. So the true dragon, by the way, is a reference to another story. There was a man by the name of Shoko who loved dragons, and all over his room there were pictures, sculptures, and paintings of dragons. A true dragon up in heaven was very impressed and appreciated Shoko's love of dragons. One day he wanted to visit Shoko and show him a true dragon. So one night this dragon came down to visit Shoko and stuck his face through one window and his tail through the other window. Shoko was so shocked he fainted. Long accustomed to imitations, do not be suspicious of what is true. Dogen goes on to say, devote your energies to the way that points directly to the real thing, the real dragon. Revere the one who has gone beyond learning and free from effort. Accord with the enlightenment of all the Buddhas. Resonate. The gift waves of influence reverberate, resonate in our heart-mind. Accord with the enlightenment of all the Buddhas. Succeed to their samadhi. Continue to live in such a way, and you will be such a person. The treasure store will open of itself, and you may enjoy it freely. So finally, one of our dedications says, the vows of our ancestors continuously manifest our practice here together. The ancestors, Buddha, Kashyapa, Kakuzan Shido, Dogen, Hounjiu, their vows are present in our sitting. Please be in touch with your own ancestors. Dogen Zenji says, we will all be Buddha ancestors. We will all be Buddha ancestors. You, right now, are surrounded by Buddha ancestors. You, sitting in your own seat, a Buddha ancestor. Don't settle. Don't draw conclusions. Please continue to sit with great intimacy. Please continue to sit with great nearness. Please continue to practice with your whole heart. The vows of our ancestors continuously manifest. What are these vows?
Thank you for listening to the Zen Community of Oregon podcast, and thank you for your practice. New episodes air every week. Please consider making a donation at zendust.org. Your support supports us.